Rich Eisen and Tom Pelissero on why Jayden Daniels should be the second quarterback drafted. Jayden Daniels or Drake Maye? That is the question. Caleb Williams is the consensus first overall pick to the Chicago Bears, but then the Washington Commanders and the New England Patriots go 2-3 with very, very, very quarterback needy franchises. So who goes second? I think Jayden Daniels probably goes second at this point, but there's one caveat to that. So Drake Maye early on in the draft process, Drake Maye seemed to be the raw but talented quarterback prospect that people fall in love with. You know, the Josh Allen, even the Ben Roethlisberger to an extent, players like that where it's like, look, we have this raw skill set. We can develop it. We can turn it into something. He may be the best athlete of the draft, whatever. Well, turns out as the combine happened and as pro days happened and more tape came out, it sounds like teams are relatively souring on Drake Maye. And the idea that Drake Maye could be the second overall pick doesn't seem to be the case. The caveat to that is that I recently heard, as of Friday, as of April 19th, I had heard that the Commanders and Jayden Daniels did not have a good meeting. I heard that the two sides didn't seem like they were agreeing. Jayden Daniels' camp's not very happy with Washington. So it may be one of those things where a personality or just the player and the front office, and they just don't gel. And that happens sometimes. You know, sometimes it's not just all about who is the best player. Sometimes it's about who is the best fit in this building, who is the best fit with our front office, with our coaches. That's nothing against Jayden Daniels. You know, sometimes you just meet somebody and you're like, not really a fan of this guy. You know, that can work both ways. It can work for Jayden if Jayden met the front office and coaches with Washington and was like, I don't know about this. This seems a little meh to me. So let's hear what Tom, with the hair, my God, the Kelly Slater big wave front hair there. Very nice.
The consensus, I'm talking to all of the scouts and coaches and executives. How many people did you speak to, by the way, the grand total? You got a number?
I would fairly say dozens. I've got a spreadsheet somewhere where I was tracking this for myself. I would say well over half the teams are represented through the quotes in the story. And certainly tried to have a variety of whether it's coordinators, position coaches, head coaches, GMs, area scouts, personnel directors, the full gamut.
Okay.
I love it. I've been on record saying I like that more than some random person in their basement doing mock drafts. I like to hear what is the general consensus idea? What are GMs saying? What are front office execs saying? What are scouts saying? What are all these people saying? Now, the draft season is also lying season, so, take it with a grain of salt. But I do like these kind of reports of insider info versus just some guy grading players. And
you found a couple that would have taken Jayden Daniels over Caleb Williams if they had the choice? You found some?
Yeah, and of course.
Who? Now hold on a second. That's wild. That's a crazy idea. I mean, I guess there's always going to be some, but I don't know about that. I think Caleb Williams is a generational prospect. I think he's a generational quarterback prospect. I think you have to take him. That's not to say he will automatically be good. I would say the same thing about Jamarcus Russell. He was a generational quarterback prospect. You had no choice but to take him. It didn't work out. It is what it is. When players like this come along, the Cam Newtons, the Jamarcus Russells, the Caleb Williams, Andrew Luck to an extent, I don't know about that one as much. But when those players come around, you got to take a chance on him. Michael Vick. Michael Vick at the time was like, we've never seen a player like this. We have to take this player just on the sheer maybe that he pans out. I think that is what Caleb Williams is. If Caleb Williams can put it all together in the pros, he will absolutely be special.
Of course, it's easier to say when you're a scout or you're a personnel person, well, I would take this guy, because you're not the one putting your name on it. If you do something that out of the box, I mean, if Ryan Poles tomorrow walks into the room and says, hey, I think we're going to take Jayden Daniels, there'd be a lot of people taken aback, to say nothing of what we would think, to say nothing of what the public would think. I actually asked some general managers about this, Rich, and it was really interesting about, do you have a choice here? If you were Ryan Poles, would you even have the option to do the other thing? And
now, see, that's interesting too, because a lot of the times it is owner driven, and a lot of the times the owner is like, hey, look, we're taking blank player. All you got to do, pal, is write the name on the card. So sometimes a decision this big is not solely the GM or solely the president of football operations or the coach or whatever. A lot of the times, the owner has an idea of who they want to be the franchise quarterback, who they like, who they want to be on the billboard. And as crazy as it sounds, sometimes that is the sole driver of a pick.
The general response I got was, well, you have to do the right thing. Like, there's an argument. There are people in several different buildings, I can tell you, who would say Jayden Daniels, the complete product, the thrower, the productivity, the run element, they would lean in that direction. It's a different thing to actually turn in that card. They're also Drake Maye fans. Some people would put him as the number 2 quarterback in this draft. J.J. McCarthy certainly has fans as well. But I would say
I have heard, again, as of April 19th, I've heard more people say J.J. McCarthy should go second than I've heard people say Drake Maye should go second. If there's a quarterback that falls, I have a feeling it might be Drake Maye. Now, I don't think a quarterback will fall. I think you're going to see 1, 2, 3 quarterback, and then 5 will be where possibly Minnesota comes in to take McCarthy. But if there were a shakeup, I think the shakeup would be McCarthy goes like 2 or 3. McCarthy goes higher, and Maye goes lower. I think that would be the flip-flop.
Majority, and the way that I had it ranked was Jayden Daniels at number 2. Somebody who, if you go back to where he was at Arizona State and the way that things ended there, people were going to have like a day 2 type of a grade, like third-round pick on Jayden Daniels. But he really, remember when I talked to, put in the time and made himself a better quarterback. They do a lot of virtual reality training at LSU. He really embraced that. He studied. He did put on weight.
Daniels is awesome. He reminds me a lot of RG3. Reminds me a ton of RG3's play style, how he operates. I saw somebody compare him to Cam Newton. I'm not sure where the hell that came from, because Cam Newton's about 3 Jayden Daniels put together. Jayden Daniels isn't taking on contact like that, but he plays a lot like RG3, and RG3 was super successful in the league. So it's not to say that Daniels can't. I think Daniels' game can translate. Obviously taking the hits and stuff like that, you're always worried about with a mobile quarterback, but you can't ask them to not be mobile. I think he's good. I think Jayden Daniels, he's one of those guys where 5 years ago he has a skill set that people would have kind of questioned coming into the NFL. How does it translate? But in today's game, like, it's just so so obvious now that players like this can work in the right system. Will Washington, if they take him at 2, will they be the right system? I don't know. The only system Washington seems to have figured out is the best way to lose. So it's a tough landing spot for Jayden Daniels. I'm sure if he told you in privacy, he may tell you he'd rather go to New England. So I don't know. But I think Daniels is really good. I do. I think a quarterback that's interesting is Michael Penix. Like, Michael Penix, where would you rate him? Because like Tom said, for a scout to say blank player is the second best or third best or fourth best player in the draft or whatever, it's one thing. The scout doesn't have to worry about injuries, doesn't have to worry about contracts, doesn't have to worry about team finances, doesn't have to worry about TV deals. They're speaking strictly on the productivity of the player and the assets and the tools the player has. So I got to wonder, how high would Penix be? Because if Penix didn't have the injuries, I think Penix would probably be a top 5 pick. And I'm always very wish kind of weird with injuries, because if a guy has injury concerns, but then you tell me, well, he never gets hurt. There's plenty of guys who come into the NFL with injury concerns who never get hurt, who play long, successful careers, whose injuries never come up. And on the flip side, there's a bunch of healthy players who do get injured, right? So anything can happen. So with someone like Penix, if a scout has him as the second best quarterback, and the only thing between me and him is an injury liability type situation, that's the player that I would be interested to hear like a consensus of, like, okay, what do scouts and GMs and front office execs think about him as just a player profile?
Still, the most common thing that you hear in terms of the critiques or the concerns with Jayden Daniels are, 2 years ago he weighed in, this was verified, a $190, and he takes hellacious hits. If you've seen,
the Alabama game, great example. He got just brutalized in the Alabama game. Got knocked out of that game, but that's something that you hope to learn, or you hope to teach at that level. Is that, look, and a lot of the times players too in college, they are physically better or the same as the defenders. In the NFL, it's not the case. So the player has to be smart enough to realize that and say, okay, I need to start getting down. Like, I need to start getting down, getting out of bounds, whatever. Kyler Murray is a good example where Kyler, he doesn't take hits. You know, he knows, like, I cannot sit here and just take hits. So it can be learned. It can be taught for sure. So I wouldn't put too much stock into that.
The edit that's been going around social media, Rich, of the hits on Jayden Daniels set to the Looney Tunes music, it's pretty good. It's pretty funny.
I have not seen that. However, the quote on this particular red flag involving Jayden Daniels that jumped out at me from your 13,000 words is you quoted an NFL executive talking about his skinny body. Quote, he has a borderline Merton Hanks neck. That one jumped out at me.
Wow.
I was just glad I got that one through the editors, Rich. You never know if a reference is too obscure.
No, I got
Merton Hanks played like 30 years ago, but you and I were both on the same page. And as soon as that was said, I was like, I know exactly what that looks like. Listen, he's...
You know, I always think about this too, where if you have a guy like Jayden Daniels, let's say you are Jayden Daniels, or you, either one, you're the team that drafts him, or you are Jayden Daniels. It seems like it'd be so easy to just put on 20 pounds. One way or the other. You know, like if I was drafted by a team or hired by a company or whatever, and they said, like, let's say as the fastest growing, you know, media superstar in New Orleans, let's say ESPN came knocking, and ESPN said, all right, James, we want you to do your show on ESPN, and we're going to give you, 4 years, $20 million. But caveat, you got to gain 15, 20 pounds. No problem, brother. I'd be like Sam Sulek. I'd be eating whatever, taking whatever, working out, however. I mean, I'd be huge. I'd be absolutely jacked. Like, I'm already trying to get big. You know, I've already lived the lifestyle of, like, trying to get bigger, stay bigger. It's never wrong to be strong. But if someone gave me an incentive to just continue it, get even bigger, my God, sign me up. So it always blows I can understand the cutting. I can understand dropping 40 pounds, for some players. I can understand why that'd be hard, the discipline and the nutrition and all that. But to pack it on, shoo-wee, I'd be letting it rip. I'd do everything in my power to gain as much weight as they possibly want me to gain.
He's a narrow-framed type of an individual. I mean, you talk to people at Arizona State. I know, one of the issues was why can't he put on weight? Is it, there was talk about does he need, his own nutrition program? There's people who thought, it was a commitment thing. But, listen, he did bulk up. He showed up at Pro Day at 210, which was something that,
you go, 20 pounds,
positive in scouts' minds. But it's still, he's not the biggest guy. You're going to have to make adjustments to your play style. One coordinator I talked to said, look at Anthony Richardson. Jayden Daniels takes hits like Anthony Richardson.
Yeah, Richardson's a big guy. Cam Newton's a big guy. But if you are, look at these pearly whites. I mean, it's 210. Yeah, I mean, obviously you're not going to want to take hits there, but if you're Jayden Daniels, you just have to learn how not to take that contact. Just not take those hits.
And Anthony Richardson is a huge guy.
I think it was Deontay Johnson. Somebody check. This is a random fact. It was either last year or the year before. He did not get tackled the entire season. He would always catch it and either get to the ground or catch it and get out of bounds. Maybe it was 2 years ago. But he went through the entire season and never took a full hit. Never was tackled to the ground. So it can be learned, and it certainly can happen.
6'5" and like 235 pounds. And he got hurt 3 times in 4 games last season. Cam Newton was the MVP in 2015. He was out of the league 5 years later because just the hits add up. And those are much larger individuals. And
Cam also got hit awkwardly in the throwing arm. He got hit. I think it was TJ Watt hit him. Basically ripped his rotator cuff or ripped his shoulder up. He had the surgery that Peyton Manning had. Cam's didn't work. If you saw Cam at the end, he was throwing sidearm. He couldn't even throw over the top anymore. So less about the multitude of hits and more about a very specific hit that messed up his arm.
So, yeah, I mean, you're going to need him to get down. You're going to need him to be able to curb it. There's always Lamar Jackson comparisons a little bit to Jayden Daniels, even though for what
very different players. I hate that comparison. Very different players.
The coaches say he's a little bit more straight line, but Lamar has had this remarkable knack through his career. He's never really taken the big hit. Kyler Murray has the same thing where Russell Wilson, these guys have figured out how to get down at the right moment, how to not take yards off the table, but to get down, don't take that hit. Jayden Daniels is going to be getting hit by bigger, faster, stronger people in the NFL. You're going to have to work with him on that and emphasize it. But that's a big part of his game. He's also a really, really talented passer. And some people think just in terms of pure passing ability, not
very pure, like pure passing. That's the thing that's real, I guess, surprising with Jayden, but because of how he played at Arizona State. But he's a polished passer. I mean, he can let it spin. He can let it eat. He absolutely, his running is a big part of his game too. But he can sit back there and throw it. So I mean, he's a unique prospect. I think Jayden Daniels is a great prospect. He's got to fit into the right system for sure. He has to be in the right offense, and he's got to learn, how to get down and keep himself healthy. But if it sounds like the red flags are, can he put on weight and can he avoid contact? If those are your red flags, I mean, that would be an all go for me to draft this guy.
Not arm strength, Rich. Some people put Jayden Daniels as the most talented passer in this draft.
Catch the Rich Eisen.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think he'll be the second overall pick. It's going to be, unless this Washington rumor that they did not have a great meeting, unless that is true. But I think Daniels has separated himself from Drake Maye and J.J. McCarthy as the second best quarterback in the NFL draft. Let me know in the comments below what you think. Would you take Daniels first, second, third, fourth? Or would you pass on the former LSU superstar? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you for watching. I will see you in the next video.